What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts, number the Sci. Still doing this episode solo because, as mentioned in our last episode, Tad is dealing with some back issues, and so hopefully he's on the mend soon and be back joining us on the podcast, giving us on takes on everything regarding fantasy football, other football, pop culture references. I mean, everything and anything in between there. But definitely want to close out the head coaching series. We have done all 6 new head coaches for the 2025 season. Last one here in today's episode, we'll be covering Brian Schottenheimer with the Dallas Cowboys being named their head coach after Mike McCarthy's contract, was not renewed for this season. They decided to go in a different direction, so they hired Brian Schottenheimer, their former offensive coordinator. We'll get into all of that. We'll get into his offensive scheme and possibly a player who could benefit from this new change here with the change to Brian Schottenheimer over Mike McCarthy over the past couple of seasons here. So, as mentioned, talk about Brian Schottenheimer here. So, we're going to get into a little bit of his background as to how he got to where he is. Started his career at the University of Kansas as a backup quarterback in 1992. Didn't see much opportunity there, so he transferred to the University of Florida for the 1993 season onwards, finished his college career there. Did sit out in 1993 as a transfer player, but he was able to play from 1994 through 1996. Served as a backup to Danny Werfel, and if you remember Danny Werfel as a sort of blast for the past name there, he went on to win the Heisman Trophy in 1996. He beat out the likes of Peyton Manning, Warwick Dunn, Jake the Snake Plummer, and Orlando Pace was actually up for that award in 1996 as well. But Danny Werfel out of Florida won that award in 1996. Schottenheimer was a member of that 1996 national championship team that beat Florida State in the Sugar Bowl as well. Overall, though, his college career did not speak the greatest numbers there, as he went a total of 25 passes off of 38 attempts for 290 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he also ran for 1 touchdown. So not bad for, I'd probably say, 1 game in today's situation here in college football or the pros, but for a college career that does not speak volumes, whether that was in the past or in current time as well. So with sort of the limited playing opportunities he had, a limited statistics he was sort of able to build to sort of carve out a potential career in the NFL or CFL or wherever he wanted to go. Joined the coaching ranks. So he started as an assistant with the St. Louis Rams under Dick Vermeil's coaching staff in 1997. Jumped around quite a bit here in the early parts of his career. So he jumped to the Kansas City Chiefs in 1998 as an assistant as well. But this time he joined his father's coaching staff in Marty Schottenheimer. We heard that Schottenheimer name before. That's because Marty Schottenheimer is his father there. So he joined the coaching staff there with his dad in 1998. He was able to ascend the career ladder by going back to the college football ranks with Syracuse to become their new wide receivers coach in 1999. He then jumped over to the USC Trojan staff in 2000 as a tight ends coach. Eventually came back to the NFL in 2001 to become the new quarterbacks coach with the Washington Redskins. Washington at the time, they leaned very heavily on the run game, as another blast of the past name here. Stephen Davis led the NFL in rushing attempts with 356. He was third in the NFL in rushing yards with 1,432 yards in a breakout season for Washington. Second time that Schottenheimer joined his dad's coaching staff, as he was the head coach in Washington for the 2001 season. But here's another sort of familial connection here. Marty's brother and Brian's uncle, Kurt Schottenheimer, was the defensive coordinator for the Redskins in 2001 as well. Marty Schottenheimer was fired by Dan Snyder in 2002. He became the new head coach for the San Diego Chargers, and Brian followed him there to take the quarterback job there as well. Brian Schottenheimer was very instrumental in the development of Drew Brees. It was then with the Chargers before he became a better well-known name, going with the New Orleans Saints in just a couple of years after that. Brian Schottenheimer helped him win the Comeback Player of the Year award in 2004, along with making the Pro Bowl, and he finished fifth in the Offensive Player of the Year voting that year as well. He left his dad's coaching staff in 2006 to take his first offensive coordinator job with the New York Jets. His success with Breeze led to the Jets hiring him to hopefully stabilize the very up and down career that former first round pick Chad Pennington's sort of career was sort of going so far. In his first season, the Jets made the playoffs, and Pennington won the Comeback Player of the Year award. Pennington had the fourth highest completion percentage in the league and had the 10th most passing yards in the league as well. Was rumored to be in place to take the head coaching job at the Miami Dolphins, which was vacated by Nick Saban because he returned to college football. Things did not work out in Miami, so he went back to the college football ranks. Schottenheimer was in play there, but he ultimately decided to stay with the New York Jets. Unfortunately, injuries to Pennington in 2007 saw the Jets have a less successful season. They eventually signed Brett Favre in 2008 with Pennington, moving on to the Miami Dolphins, coincidentally there. Favre did not have a stellar season with the Jets in 2008, but we did see running back Thomas Jones continue to find success at the running back position. Also, you have receivers Lavernius Coles and Jericho Cotchery were very stable performers at the receiver position as well. Jets actually finished ninth in the NFL in most points scored on offense. As mentioned, the Favre experiment ended for the Jets after one season, just not successful at all. He ended up sort of salvaging his career with the Minnesota Vikings after that, but thus begun the Mark Sanchez era with Rex Ryan as the new head coach in 2009. They continued to lean on the run game as Thomas Jones had his third straight 1,000-yard season and his second straight season with double-digit touchdowns. So he was a definitely big part of their offense under Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez. As mentioned, with Rex Ryan now at the helm, the defense took precedence, and we didn't see much scoring from Schottenheimer's offense now. He stuck with the Jets through the 2011 season and eventually then left to join the St. Louis Rams staff again in 2012 to become their new offensive coordinator. He helped Steven Jackson get his final 1,000-yard season of his career, which was his 8th straight overall as well. Helped coach Sam Bradford back from injury and led to him having a big comeback season, throwing for the 11th most passing attempts in the league and the 15th most passing touchdowns as well. After a great start by Sam Bradford in 2013, he eventually got hurt again, though, throwing 14 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions in the first 7 weeks of the season. So he was on track to have another stellar season, but unfortunately, an injury got the best of him. He was on track. If he played all 16 games, remember they were playing 16 games at that time in 2013, he was on track to throw for over 4,000 yards and over 30 touchdowns if he stayed healthy, with only 10 interceptions as well. So a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio is very, very good numbers there for Sam Bradford if he was to stay healthy there. I'm actually a little upset that unfortunately Tad's not on the broadcast here because, yeah, there's some blasphemous past names with the St. Louis Rams here specifically because through 2013, we saw the short-lived emergence of Zach Stacy in the backfield as he rushed for 973 yards and 7 touchdowns off of 250 attempts in his rookie year. As mentioned earlier, Steven Jackson had his final 1,000-yard season 1 year prior. He eventually moved on to sign with the Atlanta Falcons, and that's why we are hearing the name of Zach Stacy here in 2013. 2014, unfortunately, was just lackluster for the Rams again, and Schottenheimer, as Sam Bradford was out the entire season with an ACL injury. We saw another brief emergence of a different running back this time. It was the former Auburn standout, Trey Mason. He ran for 765 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns off of 179 attempts there. Schottenheimer just wasn't seeing much success there, stability there at the position there with the St. Louis Rams. So he went back to the college ranks to become the new offensive coordinator for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2015. In 2014, the Georgia Bulldogs ranked 8th in the FBS in points scored per game at 41.3 per game. Now they hired Schottenheimer. Unfortunately, they took a severe drop because in 2015, under Schottenheimer, they dropped to 85th in the nation and scored only 26.3 points per game. Not that successful there. Schottenheimer returned to the NFL to become the quarterbacks coach of the Indianapolis Colts for the 2016 and 2017 seasons. He helped coach up Andrew Luck in a return season after he suffered a lacerated kidney in 2015 and missed half the season. Luck threw for over 4,000 yards and had 31 touchdowns. In 2017, unfortunately, Luck missed the entire season with a shoulder injury, and Schottenheimer was tasked with having to salvage that quarterback position. And he sort of had Jacoby Brissett there to lead the offense. Unfortunately, Colts had one of the league's worst passing offenses, tied for the fewest passing touchdowns in the league as one of the only 3 teams that year to throw for under 3,000 passing yards total. So, yeah, not the best there, but he kind of had to sort of, MacGyver situation there at the quarterback position with his star quarterback being out. He had to go with Jacoby Brissett, who looked good, I remember that season at times, but just overall, they leaned heavily on the run game. Just overall, that team was just not that great that year. Despite the struggles, though, the Seahawks hired him to become the new offensive coordinator, and he held that position from 2018 through 2020 with the Seattle Seahawks. Through those 3 seasons, Schottenheimer had an offense that ranked top 10 in total points scored in every single season those 3 years. He helped in the brief breakout of Chris Carson, former 7th-round draft pick, running back there in the backfield, led to the emergence as well as DK Metcalf as a rookie in 2019. Also was coaching Russell Wilson in his prime as he went to 3 straight Pro Bowls during his time under Schottenheimer. After bringing his career sort of back to prominence, he unfortunately took another serious regression, which at the time maybe he didn't realize, but obviously, hindsight's 2020. So he took a job with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2021 to be the new passing game coordinator under head coach Urban Meyer. And obviously, I say that name and you talk about the NFL, you can obviously tell that clearly things did not work out. Jacksonville had the fewest passing touchdowns and the 5th lowest completion percentage and the 11th fewest total passing yards in the league that year. Just abysmal. I think it's one of those throwaway years. It's just unfortunate. It also affects, just sort of quick tangent here. People like to compare stats with quarterbacks here. And so you look at Trevor Lawrence, unfortunately, that one year, his very first year under Urban Meyer, sort of took a hit and he had bad numbers there. It sort of affects now his career statistics. So it's just unfortunate that sort of year just affects a lot of different people there as far as like their numbers and, their stats and just like, their performance overall. And so, yeah, it's just unfortunate just that season had to happen with Urban Meyer and the Jaguars there. But, it is what it is. And so we sort of move on from there. With that sort of unfortunate situation there, the Dallas Cowboys hired him in 2022 to be a coaching consultant after the Jaguars coaching staff was all let go at the end of the 2021 season within very smart reasoning there. He mainly worked with defensive coordinator Dan Quinn in providing analysis of opposing offenses to help him game plan each and every single week. And I think they found very big success there because Dan Quinn was a very successful coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys on defense. Eventually was able to land a head coaching job with the Washington Commanders. With Kellen Moore taking the offensive coordinator job with the Los Angeles Chargers in 2023, Schottenheimer was then promoted to the OC job with the Cowboys. Cowboys offense was absolutely on fire that year in 2023. They led the league with the most points scored, tied for the 2nd in fewest turnovers on offense, and had the 5th most total yards on offense as well. Dak Prescott had a career year, finished 2nd in MVP voting, finished 5th in Offensive Player of the Year voting that year, and he did make the Pro Bowl and was 2nd team All-Pro. CeeDee Lamb also had the best year of his career as well. He had 135 receptions, 1,749 receiving yards, and 12 touchdowns. He made the Pro Bowl, was 1st team All-Pro, and finished 3rd in Offensive Player of the Year voting as well. So the Cowboys had a very successful season that year. In 2024, unfortunately, the Dallas offense regressed, with Prescott missing half the season with a hamstring injury that required surgery. Fortunately, Cowboys offense only scored 30 or more points in only 3 games in the entire season, but they also had 6 games with less than 20 points scored. So, yeah, not the best offense for them that year in 2024. Sort of happens when you're missing your star quarterback there. The Cowboys, as mentioned at the beginning of this episode, decided not to renew Mike McCarthy's contract at the end of the season. They ended up shocking the entire NFL world sort of things. With sort of those big names out there, there's rumors that they may bring in Deion Sanders possibly in play there. They had, some big names that were possibly in contention to take the head coaching job. They shocked the world a little bit there, promoting Brian Schottenheimer to the head coaching position there for the Dallas Cowboys, and he will now lead the charge for the Dallas Cowboys going forward. How long he stays there, that we'll see obviously how long that sort of ends up there in Jerry's world there for specifically. But lot to like with the sort of coaching history there. You see there, you sort of, one of the sort of common threads there that we're able to see it is he's able to develop quarterbacks, especially ones that are coming off bad seasons, able to sort of get them back to where they once were. Very prominent in the run game as well. But just you see, there's a lot of things that you could like with Brian Schottenheimer, lots of experience. Obviously, his dad's a former coach. His uncle, Kurt Schottenheimer, is a former coach as well. So there's lots of pedigree there to sort of lead to a lot of experience and lots of potential success now going forward now as a first-time head coach in the NFL or anywhere, actually. He was never a head coach in the college football ranks either. So yeah, we'll see how this all works out there. So sort of laid out sort of a brief sort of idea as far as what we can expect from his offense there, but let's go a little bit deeper into his offensive coaching style, what we can expect from this new look Cowboys offense here in 2025 and possibly going forward. So I think first thing that we can sort of look at here with the Cowboys offense in 2025 is that Brian Schottenheimer will establish the run. I think that is the biggest thing that we can sort of say here is that in the 14th season that Schottenheimer was an offensive coordinator, he has produced a 1,000-yard rusher in 9 of them. So, I mean, he's a very big proponent of establishing the run, comes from a very old school train of thought. And while he was able to mix things up in the past, he relies heavily on leading with the run. You also want to couple that with the fact that his new offensive coordinator, Clayton Adams, comes over from the Arizona Cardinals, where he was previously the offensive line coach. So Clayton Adams was the offensive lines coach in 2023 and 2024. The Cardinals ranked 4th in total rushing yards in 2023 and 7th in 2024, both of which were a credit to Adams and that offensive coaching staff there. It definitely helps when you have a running back like James Conner as well. But I mean, just you establish that with a run. You've established that with a solid blocking system with your offensive line to lead to opening holes for your running backs there. Kyler Murray, obviously being a running quarterback, sort of lead adds into that total as well. But just, I think just you see that here with the Cowboys. I think they bring in Adams as an offensive coordinator. I think they want to establish the run. They definitely want to establish solid line play as well to lead to protection for Dak Prescott, but obviously leading the charge with that running game as well. So while Schottenheimer prefers to establish the run, this also obviously plays in the fact that this sets up play action. So his offenses feature power running, zone blocking, and a strong commitment to early down rushing. From 2018 to 2020, Russell Wilson ranked top 10 in most play action dropbacks. Now let's sort of go to a little bit more recent here in 2023, the year that the Cowboys had probably the most successful offense in recent history. Dak Prescott was 3rd in the NFL in most play-action drop-back passes. So I think when you find success in a Schottenheimer offense, you see a lot of this drop-back passing. You see a lot of that established run there. So they both play hand-in-hand each other to really keep the defense guessing as far as what is coming at them in a given situation, in a given certain drive as well. So yeah, I think we should see a lot of drop-backs, a lot of play-action passes from this offense going forward as well. When you establish the run as sort of the leading part of your offense, this also sort of signifies that you may be a little bit more on the conservative side. I think that's what we'll see here with Schottenheimer. It'll be a little bit of a time-killing offense. We always hear on the broadcast all the time when they're playing against the likes of, like, your Patrick Mahomes and your Tom Brady's and your Peyton Manning's back in the day. They want to keep them on the sideline as much as can. So that means you're killing a lot of clock. So how do you kill a lot of clock? You run the ball, you play action. There's some screen passes every so often. So it's like overall, you're doing whatever you can to make sure that more clock is coming off and there's less time for the opposing offense to put together any sort of successful drives or build any sort of rhythm. So I think we should see a lot of that here from Brian Schottenheimer as well, leading with that run to, I think, just establish a lot of just time-killing aspect there. I'm not saying that there's not going to be any sort of explosiveness. I think there's going to be just, a lot of that just, infrequently. So it's like, the offense will sort of lull the defense into a situation where they're going to start to fall asleep and really just understand that just this is going to lead more the run and just really be a little bit slow, methodical approach. But then that's where you then hit them with the deep shots. They just traded, obviously, for George Pickens in the offseason, so that's where they could sort of establish a deep shot to him. CeeDee Lamb, obviously, just these situations where it's like, they'll be able to sort of lull them into a false sense of security and then all of a sudden come back and just sort of attack them through the air, get these big chunk yardages. But I think the biggest thing is just how is this play action offense going to work, because we really need to make sure that this running game can be established with their new look backfield, because there's no more Tony Pollard, there's no more Ezekiel Elliott, there's no more these running backs are all gone. They moved on to different places here. So how's that all going to look there? Can Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and rookie Jayden Blue lead a good rushing attack in Dallas? That is the big question sort of centering along this sort of Dallas Cowboys offense in 2025, because, Javonte Williams is on a one-year deal. I think Miles Sanders is on a one-year deal. Rookie Jayden Blue is obviously not established in the NFL yet. So it's a very new look sort of situation backfield there to see just who's going to emerge from that backfield. Are they all going to work in conjunction together? I mean, just how's it all going to look? Because, yeah, if they can't establish the run, that's really going to affect the rest of their offense there, especially in Brian Schottenheimer style offense, where he likes to lead with the run first, excuse me. So yeah, if they can't do that, it's going to be very tough struggles there in Big D for Brian Schottenheimer and the Cowboys offense, as well as all you fantasy managers out there. So I think that's a good transition point here. Let's sort of talk about fantasy football and who's going to benefit the most. So, I'd love to say that it's going to be the running game, because that's what he's going to lead his offense from. But like I said, I just prefaced it by just saying that I don't know what this backfield is going to look like. I don't know who's going to emerge from this backfield. Can we rely on these guys? I mean, I love Javonte Williams. I mean, if you're a longtime listener of the podcast, I'm a big Javonte Williams fan. Unfortunately, just did not get the opportunities in Denver, or they just hated him in Denver. Whatever it was, he wasn't able to establish himself there. This is sort of his last opportunity to sort of break out, to really just establish himself there. But can he do it? That's the big thing. I don't know what we'll see there. Miles Sanders, a veteran. Carolina was not a great situation for him. He had very good years in Philadelphia during the last couple of years there in Philadelphia. But let's see if he can sort of reestablish himself back with the Cowboys. And rookie Jayden Blue, I mean, I'm really just not sure what to sort of think about him as far as can he make that transition to the NFL there. But I think the guy that's going to benefit the most, he sort of led the charge there for the 2023 offense. The guy I think benefits the most from the sort of new look offense is Dak Prescott. So Schottenheimer has done good work with quarterbacks. I mean, I sort of already talked about this before, but just he developed good quarterbacks, including Drew Brees, Chad Pennington, a little bit of Mark Sanchez, and I think most recently and most importantly, Dak Prescott himself. In 6 seasons as offensive coordinator, Schottenheimer has produced a top 10 fantasy quarterback in PPR leagues. 2 seasons ago in 2023, Prescott finished as the 3rd best quarterback in PPR league. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of hope there, a lot of optimism that Prescott, so as long as he can stay healthy, I mean, that you can say that about any player in fantasy football these days. But I think with Prescott and the Cowboys specifically, if he can stay healthy, this offense has a lot of potential to be one of the top scoring offenses. And I think in fantasy purposes as well, Prescott then can be a very beneficial piece to your fantasy roster. Prescott and his passing offense has more assurance that they can move the ball down the field. I think you look at the fact that they have unproven lead backs, as mentioned, with Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, rookie Jayden Blue. They don't scream like they're going to be big players as far as fantasy is concerned. I talked about the acquisition of George Pickens. They already have an established piece in CeeDee Lamb. Tight end Jake Ferguson just got a new deal, so they definitely trust him as far as being a big part of the offense as well. But I think, talking about that sort of, breaking all that huge plays where, we got the big, play action passes that will hit Pickens on wide open home run plays. CeeDee Lamb will be able to find chances to sort of hit big hit team as well. As long as they can sort of establish that run there, I think we should see a good offense there from Dak Prescott and this passing offense. But, as mentioned, if Prescott can stay healthy, he has excellent value in this year's fantasy draft, because if we look at his current ADP and his position ranking, he's currently ranked just outside the top 12 and number 13 at the position. And he's also being ranked outside the top 100 when it comes to overall, somewhere around, 114 and 115. So if you look at that top 13, so if you're playing in a 12-person league, he's not being drafted as a starting quarterback as of right now. Obviously, August is where we're going to see a lot more, clearing up as far as, ADP and things like that. But as of right now, based on some of the early drafts and some of the early information that we're sort of gaining from drafts that are being taken right now, he's outside being a starting quarterback in fantasy leagues. And I think with this change here with Brian Schottenheimer, I think that's just massive value that you could take advantage of. Because, I mean, this guy, as mentioned, big key. I mean, I can't stress this enough, but just if he stays healthy, Dak Prescott can be one of the best fantasy quarterbacks this year in 2025. Obviously, his long-term potential, we don't know about that, but I think this year specifically with the acquisitions and the sort of shift that they're sort of making there, I think, you can get a starting caliber fantasy quarterback in your mid rounds, maybe even closer to those double digit rounds. You're looking at like 9, 10, 11. He may potentially still be there. So I think if you could fill out the rest of your roster and then still get a starting caliber quarterback that late in your fantasy draft, that just means you're going to build out your roster a lot better, and you're just going to be overall a lot more competitive because you're getting a starting caliber quarterback way in the middle rounds. I think just overall your roster is going to benefit there. So yeah, Dak Prescott, I think, is a massive sleeper this year. I think he's got a lot of potential in this offense with Brian Schottenheimer now taking the helm. I think just, this is a guy that I think screams to be one of those players that's just like, why was he valued so low? I think because of the injuries, unfortunately. So yeah, if he can stay healthy, I mean, sorry, it sounds like a broken record here, but if he can stay healthy, this is a guy that could really benefit your fantasy roster and really give you massive value. I think that's the biggest thing when we're playing fantasy football and you're looking at your drafts. Value is always your biggest thing that you want to look at, your return on investment. If you're drafting a guy in the first round, you want to make sure this guy is one of your key producers for your fantasy roster. If you're drafting a guy in the later rounds, especially in the middle and towards the end of your draft, you're looking on those potential, lottery ticket players, as they like to call them, where it's like, very much high potential, very low risk here. So I think the same thing here. It's like if you miss out on some of those top guys, like your Josh Allens and your Lamar Jacksons and your Patrick Mahomes possibly as well, if you miss out on those guys, fill out the rest of your roster. I think you can grab Dak Prescott way later, and you'll still be able to compete with everybody else because you're getting a starting caliber quarterback way later in your fantasy draft there. So Dak Prescott, like I said, massively being underrated in fantasy drafts right now. We'll see how things sort of affect as we sort of get into August, a heavier draft month there. Maybe his stock sort of shoots up a little bit there. But yeah, still, for him to go that late, being undervalued compared to the likes of Baker Mayfield, going through an offensive coordinator change. You got Bo Nix. Can you replicate what he did last year? He's being valued pretty high. Justin Fields, I mean, he's being very value high. And with the New York Jets, he's dealing with a toe injury. He should be good to go, but just, that's something to sort of keep aware of. But just like, yeah, Dak Prescott, established veteran in the league, to be valued that low, something you definitely want to take advantage of there. But guys, that will close out our head coaching series. That was our final episode there. Unfortunately, Tad was not able to join us for the last two there, but, just hoping that he's, doing all right, but back on the podcast as we sort of continue on with their fantasy coverage. We wanted to close out the head coaching series. I've definitely been in discussion with him to sort of figure out what the next steps are for our podcast, whether to continue solo or whether, hopefully bring on some guest hosts. Hopefully he'll be back on soon and we'll be able to continue and just things go back to normal. But yeah, the best way to sort of stay up to date with everything that's happening with our podcast, especially at this sort of transition point right now, make sure you're following us on our social media handles. You got me at UmDecide23, you got TadSide94, you got show handle at The Decide Guys, and of course on Instagram at The Decide Guys as well. So in case we're not dropping any episodes for the next couple of weeks as we sort of figure things out there, that is where you'll get all of our graphics, because we're working on our position rankings right now with the head coaching series sort of done and dusted now. Yeah, that is where you can sort of find all of our position rankings. We'll be dropping our sleepers and our busts and our breakout candidates, and all of that will definitely be coming in graphic form. And where you can find all those graphics is on our social media handles. So make sure you're following us there. That's where you'll get updates about our podcast as well. So you're always up to date with everything that's happening with us. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channels, where you're always up to date with our YouTube videos as well. But please, guys, make sure you're supporting our parent network at LAFB Network, because without them, there would be no us. Lots of great content coming from a lot of great content producers. I mean, they're covering everything when it comes to the NFL. We got the Hall of Fame coming in a couple of days here. As of recording, it's going to be tomorrow between the Chargers and Lions. We got Trey Lance, former Niner, and unless we talk about that, it's probably better there. But yeah, he'll be making a start there. We'll see some Omari and Hampton, rookie for the Los Angeles Chargers as well. So yeah, it should be a good game there. July, we have preseason games happening, so longer in August. So yeah, that should be pretty fun there. So they got your coverage there as far as all that's happening with that first game, how preseason's going, how training camp's been going for both the Rams and the Chargers. But they also have coverage going on for the college football teams, because college football season is going to start 1 week right before the NFL season. So yeah, they got you covered when it comes to the Bruins and the Trojans at the college football level. So they got you covered on all 4 LA football teams, both at the pros and the college level. But it's not just football anymore because they got you covered with the NBA offseason. They got you covered with your Lakers and Clippers coverage as well with what's happening with their potential signings. And, we'll have preseason happening pretty soon with the NBA as well, just about a month or so. When the NFL season kicks off, that's when we'll get NBA preseason. We already had the Summer League that's done already. But also, we're in the final stretch of the MLB season. We're coming up on the final couple months there before we get to October baseball, playoff baseball. So they got you covered with Dodgers and Angels coverage. We're coming up right before the trade deadline, just a couple more days before that is done. So we'll see if the Dodgers or Angels make any moves to sort of affect their playoff chances for this year, or if they're already ready to pack it in like the Angels more than the Dodgers, ready to pack it in and start thinking about future years there. So yeah, we'll see about all that. But they got you covered there with both NFL, college football, of course, MLB and NBA as well. So all 3 of the major sports there. 4 if you count college football, I guess separately than football there, NFL football. But just, yeah, they got you covered with all of that there. Shout out to our good friend Chauncey Talese of LA Pop Financial. They got you covered with all LA sports related news as well as pop culture news. So, I mean, Fantastic Four First Steps. I'm pretty sure he's got great coverage there. How does that all tie into the MCU universe and just all the great TV shows and movies that he's watching with his good friend Thaddeus, maybe the better Thaddeus of the 2 here. But yeah, so make sure you tune in to him wherever you find us. You can find him and his wonderful podcast there, LA Podfidential. But guys, to everybody who's been tuning in for our head coaching series, make sure you turn back and listen to the previous episodes because this is the time to start preparing for your fantasy draft. So there's a lot of information that we dropped for you on all of our head coaches, starting all the way back in the beginning with Mike Vrabel to our more recent episode, obviously with today's episode, Brian Schottenheimer. So I mean, we covered all of them. So go back, listen to it. Lots of great information to prepare for your respective fantasy drafts because, yeah, we're here in fantasy draft month in August. That's when most of them happen there. So it's a good time to start doing some mock drafts, put together your cheat sheets as far as your rankings at the positions as far as overall. So, I mean, yeah, tune back to those previous episodes. And obviously, make sure you tune in for all of our future episodes and future content coming on our social media handles, as well as our podcast and our YouTube video. Because, yeah, we're going to definitely be coming to you with a lot of information over the next month or so to get you prepared for all your fantasy drafts, to help you win your respective fantasy leagues as well. But to everybody who's already, subscribed to our podcast by dropping us comments, by rating our podcast, by watching our YouTube videos, interacting with social media. I mean, just anything and everything that you're doing to support the podcast. We really just can't thank you enough. Shout out to Tad. Hope he's doing all right. Hope he's back on the podcast soon. And yeah, appreciate everybody for tuning in.